Imagine this nightmare scenario for the economy and your everyday person. You go to work on a typical Monday morning, and your boss announces, hey, hiring is going to be frozen. But nobody's getting laid off, so you think, okay, well, at least that's good. But business has slowed down, and no one is expecting raises this year. Then also, on your way home, you stop for groceries like you normally do. You get your eggs, bacon, grits, sausage, everything. And somehow, that cart that you've been buying for years and years on end now seems super expensive. Then you go to the gas station. You go get some gas to fill up your truck, even more expensive. And you check mortgage rates when you get home because you're thinking about getting out of the house. But those rates are still way too high for you to get any kind of loan. So suddenly, your job seems less secure. The economy is slowing down, but the prices are not. And that combination is what we know as stagflation. And turns out that we kind of already are in stagflation, but no one really wants to say it. But what would happen if this went on for a year, 2 years, 3, 4, 5? How would that affect you? How would that affect me? How would that affect the world? And why does it even matter? Stagflation. Who made up that word? We're going to talk about it right now. So I started thinking about this because I saw a post by Unusual Whales, if you guys follow them, saying that investors are preparing for stagflation over the next 12 months, according to Bank of America. So I looked into it, and there's an important distinction to make. Bank of America isn't just saying stagflation is definitely coming. That's not the case because it's kind of already here. So their latest global fund manager survey found that 49% of surveyed investors expect stagflation to go on for the next 12 months. So that made me think, like, this sounds like another scary economic term, but what does stagflation actually mean? Right? It can get very ugly, but stagflation itself is quite simple. You know, stag for stagnation, and then inflation for inflation. So it's kind of like the easiest, like, fifth grade word combination that you came up with at recess. Stagnation, inflation, stagflation. Now you see, normally economic problems make a little more sense because if the economy is booming too hard, we can see inflation go up, and that's expected. People are spending, businesses are hiring more and more people, and demand is super strong. Okay, that makes sense. That seems like black and white, It's pretty obvious what goes on there, but stagflation, what happens there? It's kind of weird because it's kind of like you get the worst of both worlds, the weak or very slow economic growth, and we also get the inflation. So prices still go up, and you put them together, and as we said, stagflation. Okay, but how does that even happen? How do we get to a point of stagnation and inflation? How does that combination even occur? One way is something economists call a supply shock, which I'm sure we're familiar with this. The recent conflict in Iran has led oil to go up a lot in a short amount of time, like almost double, I think, in like a span of a few months. And oil is not just gasoline. Oil is used for everything. And when the price of oil goes up, the price of everything goes up. Think about this. Your food needs to get shipped from stores to stores. So does your clothes. So do manufacturers' goods. So do airplanes need to transport people and other materials. And businesses don't really have a choice. I mean, I guess they do. They could just get all the costs themselves and hope that they keep getting demand and a competitor doesn't come out of the water and take them out. But the second half of the problem is that higher energy costs also take away money from consumers. So if you're spending an extra $100 a month keeping your lights on and your gas running and your water bill coming through, well, then all that is more expensive. You spend less at restaurants, you spend less on travel, on electronics, whatever it is. And keep in mind, the companies that provide those services are already in a pickle because of the high oil shock that they're seeing as well. So that's how you can start to create this combination of stagnation along with inflation. That's how it starts, right? And we know this because this is not America's first rodeo. You see, in the 1970s is the classic example. There wasn't one single cause for stagnation. There were oil shocks. There were also government policy mistakes. And inflation expectations became embedded. It just kind of became a thing that you expected at the time. And eventually, America ended up dealing with really high inflation with weak economic performance. But in today's day and age, we cannot have a repeat of the 1970s because right now you might see that 3.75 interest rate from the Fed is like really high. We don't want to go higher than that. Well, imagine if tomorrow they said, you know what, 12. What? See, in the 70s, Paul Volcker, which was the chair for the Federal Reserve at that time, he raised interest rates to above 10% to deal with all that inflation. And at the end of the day, it did work. But during that period of like, I think it was a decade of people suffering, not being able to pay for anything, interest rates were just so high. People eventually made it out, right? Eventually it worked. But if we see that in today's day and age, with the stock market, with how the economy works today, an increase to 12% would be horrible. You see homes, you might see a repeat of 2008, honestly. So if we were to do the complete opposite, though, have you thought about that? What if during a whole stagnation thing, instead of raising rates, the Fed reduced them? Businesses can invest, consumers can spend, and the economy would be stimulated, right? But during stagflation, there's a problem because inflation is already high. So cutting rates could pour gasoline on the inflation problem. Then raise rates. Well, we already saw that doesn't really work, right? Because the economy is already weak during stagnation. So then you're going to raise the rates and you're going to make businesses face even tougher hiring, even tougher like situations with their business growth. Home buyers are going to face expensive mortgages and consumers are going to face expensive credit. So you will see investment slow down over time. The stock market won't do as well as it normally does, as well as general businesses, small businesses will not do as good as they normally do either. That's why stagflation is different. It's not like just treating one disease. It's like treating a bunch of things at once, hoping that while you treat one side of it, the other side doesn't see a side effect. And really quick, I'm not saying that we're going to have a repeat of the 1970s. The way that our government is structured now, our economy is structured, our monetary policy, it just can't happen. I mean, I guess it could, but that would be like doomsday scenario, like not the Avengers, but the latest CPI report shows that inflation has 3.4% over the last year. Energy prices are up almost 15%. Meanwhile, second quarter economic growth slowed to an annualized 1.5%. But the July payroll report showed a decline of 23,000 jobs. To be able to understand them, we need to know that stagflation is not caused in 1 month. It's over the course of a lot of different economic policies and just in general actions from the federal government, as well as high inflation. Maybe it could be tariffs, maybe it could be a conflict in Iran, maybe it could, all of this stuff that's going on is feeding into stagnation. So that's like on a global scale, I guess at least a US scale of what would happen. But what would happen to you and to me? Because I know that you don't wake up in the morning and say, oh, GDP growth today really ruined my Monday. That doesn't happen. But stagflation enters your life because your paycheck starts to buy less, little by little. You might say, well, my salary did go up 2 or 3%. But if your cost of living rose by 5%, well, in essence, you ended up making 2% less this year than you did last year. So the number got bigger, right? The number on your check, but your purchasing power was less. So your job becomes more vulnerable when business stops growing. They don't usually immediately fire everybody, but they just stop hiring. They reduce over time. Then bonuses get smaller, raises get smaller, raises eventually disappear. Then, if things keep going that way with stagflation, that's when we start to see layoffs. Borrowing could be very expensive for the business to be able to maintain their employment. But where this becomes really, really scary, a nightmare scenario for you and me and the economy and the US and the whole world, is whenever everyone starts seeing inflation as expected. As you know what, inflation does happen. This year, I expect a raise. This year, your landlord or landlords in general increase rents. Suppliers renegotiate contracts even higher. And everyone just starts to assume inflation is the new norm, which it becomes like a self-fulfilling prophecy because everything's already getting more expensive. So you have all the building blocks around it saying, well, we need to charge more, which causes everything to get more expensive. So everyone needs to charge more, and then it never ends. Now, of course, that's like an insane scenario that would never happen, but that is technically what could happen with a prolonged period of stagflation. But there's one thing that might be able to help you and me and everybody with this whole stagflation and managing the economy during uncertain times, which is hitting the subscribe button and like button on the video. I'm sorry to ask for it. I keep it at the end, but it does help whenever I mention it. And if you enjoyed this video, and you can check out other videos on my channel, please hit the subscribe, please like, and Jesus Christ loves you. He came to die for you 2,000 years ago. See you guys.